Welcome back to Operation Evil. This will be episode 135, and I have a guest co-host today, Heather. She has taken charge of this episode and named it Best Friend, Worst Nightmare. And she told me about this case I don't know, it was a couple months ago.
hmm
And I ended up watching it. It was a TV show. What was the show called?
Um,
Something about a roommate.
Worst roommates ever. Sorry.
Yes, yes. And I happened to watch this particular one that she had mentioned, and it was wild. So that's the one that we're talking about today. And yeah, you want to take it away? Taketh away?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity.
I'm
All
so happy to have you because we've known each other for several years now, but this is the first time we're doing a case together.
right. Hey, I know it's pretty exciting. I'm pretty pumped. All right, so this is Best Friend's Worst Nightmare. And like Nayoka said, I watched this on Netflix, and I learned how evil this person is. So this story takes place between two best friends, and the main character is Rachel, and she met her friend Jamie Lynn Ridd in 1995. And Rachel, at this time, she was 22 and Jamie was 26. And they lived somewhere in the Utah area. It doesn't really say, but I think it's close to Salt Lake City because at the end, those people and authorities are involved. And at this point, I couldn't really find any information on what Janie did for work. It doesn't really say. Later on, it discloses what she does. But at this time, Rachel, our main character, she is a paramedic. So when they met, Rachel was recently divorced. She wasn't in a really good place. She had some low self-esteem. Her husband was emotionally abusive. She had left her home with her parents and moved in with her husband, had been with him for several years. They got divorced, and then she moved back home, and then she moved in with Janie. So she was never alone. She had never known how to really live alone. And when she met Janie, Janie gave her that kind of comfort that she wanted to make her feel safe and at home. And she just thought it was a really good fit, and they had become good friends. And Janie didn't judge Rachel, because and it really boosted her self-esteem that she wasn't judged by a peer.
She seemed really perfect, like your ideal best friend.
Yes, yes, she did kind of like for lack of better terms, your woman knight in shining armor, just
Mm-hmm.
scoop you up and tell you the things you need to hear and be there for you. And she moved in with her. And Janie then quickly took on this like motherly role. Like I said again, Rachel had never been on her own. So she didn't really know a lot about bills and finance. And, she had just always kind of relied on somebody else to take her money and do what needed to be done. And so that was an even easier reason for Janie to convince Rachel to take control of her money and say, oh, just make sure I get this, I'll take care of it. I'll pay all of our bills. I'll tell you what's left over, all this kind of stuff. So she was just very almost motherly and, parentally with her way she was giving her this information. And Rachel felt comfortable with that. That's what she had been used to. She was fine with somebody taking that kind of control. And she said it also felt like good guidance, that it was almost kind of, she thought she was taking this on to like teach her and help her. And she felt that it was going to help her grow to become a better person. And because again, she was only 22. So she, didn't really know worldly ways on her own again.
I would think the same thing. It's like,
Right.
oh, my friend's taking me under her wing and showing me the way.
Exactly. And yeah, and so this, and again, she had just gotten out of this really horrible, verbally abusive situation. So in the story that Rachel, she does admit that in the beginning they were both really kind of immature, even though Janie was 26 and Rachel was only 22. But Janie was kind of shy and backward in the situation where Rachel was more outgoing and the social butterfly. But it was quoted that some of their friends said that they were each other's yin to the yang, like they complemented each other very, very well. She said that they were immature, and she knew that they were immature because some of the things that they would do to meet men at the bar were just kind of silly looking back on it. Like they would pretend Rachel would pretend she didn't know English and that Janie was the translator and like all this kind of stuff, and just to kind of hit on men and whatever. And sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. So fast forward a few months, maybe even a year. I'm not quite sure. It didn't really give a good timeline on that. But Rachel meets a guy, and she said that she noticed that Janie had started to change and became a little bit jealous of this new relationship that she was having with this man. And the man would come over and they would watch TV, and Rachel would sit outside the room and kind of, for lack of a better term, stalk them to see what they were doing. And if they
Red flag number one.
thing, yeah, right. So, and she just thought she was just being protective because she knew that the situation that she had been in, and she didn't want to see her friend get hurt again. And, just like all those excuses that she would give. And she would even go to the point where Rachel would get mad because the TV was too loud and she couldn't hear what they were saying to each other if they were talking. So she would stand at the end of the hallway and yell that your TV is too loud, turn it down.
Can you imagine if I did that to you? Like, Heather, can you turn on the TV? I can't hear your conversation
Like,
with this dude.
you're right. But in the back of your mind, if you have been in that kind of relationship, I can see how that would be like. You would think somebody was looking out for you. Like if you didn't catch the red flags of, verbal abuse or gaslighting or any of that kind of stuff. So in her defense, she was still very on guard, and trusting in the people that she knew. So at this point, Jill had been a paramedic for going on 6 years, and she had an accident at work and hurt her back. And she was off for a while, and then she tried to go back and she hurt it again, and she was off for a while, and she just kept re-injuring this back injury. And then so it came to the point where she was put on so many work restrictions that she kind of just had to quit her job and was no longer able to do that job. And then Rachel starts to feel really, really guilty that she wasn't contributing to the bills because she didn't have an income. And she was also feeling guilty because she had led a very active lifestyle. She was a runner. She jogged every day. She was a social butterfly. She was used to being on her feet and working paramedic shifts, the 12-hour shifts, all this kind of stuff. And now her life as she knew it had just kind of breaks and it was ended. And after this injury, and she found out that she was pregnant. So at this point, they had been roommates for about 14 years. So we've fast forwarded pretty far into this. So here's Rachel. She says, here I am, and I'm pregnant, and I'm injured. What do I do? And so now she has become 100% reliable on Janie, because when she broke the news to the baby daddy, he said, I'm out. He didn't want any part of it. So she was fully reliant on Janie. And at this point, Janie was in total control of what money was left in the bank and what she could do, because she was pregnant, on restrictions, had this injury, but she knew she needed Janie at this point to survive and to go on with her life. So in 2010, Rachel gives birth to a son. And at a young age, it doesn't say how old or whatever, but he was diagnosed with a severe form of autism. And Rachel was told that most of his life, or that he would probably be nonverbal and have lots of other challenges that come along with his type of autism. So now, with all this in mind, Rachel is really just like, at her wit's end. She really doesn't know what to do. She has her livelihood, and that's kind of all she knew. She was trying to figure out what else she could do with her life, but she was still having so much pain that it was almost impossible to get out of bed some days. But as any parent would do, and in my opinion, she took out a life insurance policy on herself for her son, so that if something were to happen to her with all of her injuries, that he was going to be taken care of properly.
That's fair. I would think that was a good idea too.
It was pretty substantial, like 100,000 maybe. So a pretty good amount. And this was all to be used for his care if something was to happen. And so guess who she lists as the guardian?
Her best friend.
Your best friend. Why not? Your parents don't live near you at this time. Your sister lives several hours away. You live with this person you've known for what, 14 years?
I
Time.
mean, it's like her partner without her being her partner. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you could become a dependent relationship upon someone. And, you have a home together and you're making things work. So exactly.
Hmm.
So Janie becomes the guardian. So we're gonna back up to when she was in labor. Rachel was in labor. She re-injured her back, and so this poor girl can't catch a break. Right?
No, she has the worst luck ever.
She does. I was like, I wonder if she had like brittle bone disease, but it's all has
Hmm.
her back and her neck. So she finally broke down and did some other doctors and got a new MRI. And surgeon after surgeon told her that the only way she was going to get any relief was to have surgery. So she had this surgery on her back, and it doesn't really disclose exactly what her injury is, but I'm assuming it was a pretty substantial injury. So in 2015, she had to have this surgery. So now she'd had surgery before. I'm sorry. So she did have surgery before, and there's been 20 years in between the surgeries.
And the
Um,
baby was born at this time, right?
right,
Because that's when she re-injured her back.
correct.
Okay.
And most all she could do was just lie around because her pain was unbearable, and she couldn't get up and tend to Ryder as much as a new mom or even a toddler mom is used to doing because
Hmm.
she's recovering from this surgery. And again, she was had restrictions about what she could lift and how long she could be up and stuff like that. So yeah, so at this point too, her family had moved 5 hours away, and they were grateful for Janie. They just thought, what would we do without her? There would be nobody around. Somebody would have to move out there and help her take care of herself and a baby, just all this kind of stuff. So she was very helpful. And one of Rachel's family members is quoted as saying she was being so good to Ryder. All right, so this is when we hear about what Janie does for a job. She is works at a place there in Utah that is like a job finding place for indigenous people. So the indigenous people come to this place and she helped them find work. And at this point, Rachel has been declared disabled and is on full medical disability.
I mean, doesn't Janie sound perfect? Her job helping people, takes
Mhm.
in her best friend for years and years and years,
Right.
helps with her best friend's child.
Yeah. So
She sounds amazing.
devoted and selfless. Yes. Sign her up.
I know.
All right. So shortly after this, Janie kind of, in my opinion, and as I say, works the system, so to speak, to become a paid respite worker and to take care of Ryder. So, doing what she's already doing, she works the system and is now getting paid by the state to be respite care for Ryder.
I see. I
Yeah.
see.
So, yeah. So, and then this becomes a very large part of their income, right? And then it also becomes Jamie's like hones in on it and becomes her main focus. She's like almost obsessed with taking care of Ryder. Just put that out there. She was taking him to school, to his doctor's appointments, and wherever he needed to be, occupational therapies, all that kind of stuff.
She was like pretending like she was the mom, doing
Bing,
all the mom stuff.
bingo. So Rachel said that when she finally was well enough that she could stand and walk and sit in a car for a good time, that she went to one of these school events and nobody at the school knew who she was. But they said when Janie walked in there, it was like she was the mayor of the school. Everybody like chummed up to her. Everybody was like, "Hi, Janie!" Like the principals and the teachers and even other parents. They were just all just like oh, look, here's Janie, blah, 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 here's Janie, oh, hey, Janie. So, yeah. So,
Ouch, that's gotta hurt her feelings.
yes. And so Rachel gets the impression, like, is she leading people to believe that she's Ryder's mom? This is like a thought she said that was going on in her head. And this is when they started arguing after they leave the school. They start arguing about who really is taking care of Ryder and who's the mom. And like, they kind of have a little blow up about it. So I'll take another little step back. Rachel did work with Ryder as he was younger because she was like, no, my child is going to speak. He's not going to be nonverbal. And did a lot of research and found all this stuff out that if you sing to them, then they are more likely to sing the responses back. So she would teach him a lot of things and say a lot of things to him, but she would like sing it and make a song. And he slowly began to repeat some of these songs back to her and responses back to her. So she did do motherly things with him. It's just sometimes she was not physically able to do motherly things with him. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
So Janie didn't like when Rachel shot her down at home about this, but she knew she didn't have a say or choice because on paper and biologically, Ryder is Rachel's son. So somewhere between 2015 and 2018, Rachel had 7 back surgeries.
Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
And at this time, she also began to have some of these falling episodes. She just kept falling. So she would fall so much that what happens when you fall, you get injured, right?
Yeah.
She re-injured her neck and her back once again and had to have another surgery. And
Can you imagine her medical bills?
no, I was thinking
Oh
that,
my
like,
God.
well, I'm sure now that she's on disability that a lot of that is covered, but
Yeah.
and that would be shell shock to open a medical bill of these, you know, accumulate
Oh yeah.
accumulated bills. And so, like we mentioned, Rachel is a paramedic, and she knew as her day as a paramedic how bad opioids and pain meds can become, or how quickly they can become addictive and how bad that they can be. So she did not want to take any more than she was supposed to and any more than she was prescribed. It went down to the fact that she actually kept a very detailed log about when she took what and how much she took of it at what hour. It was like this very, very, very detailed log. And she made Janie keep this log as well. Like, I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to become addicted. That, she like knew that she did not need an addiction on top of all of this other stuff. And especially with her son, right? So she was made sure that that log was kept diligently. So on June 20th, 2018, Janie and Ryder were out for some reason, and Rachel was home alone, and she went to her mailbox. When she got to the mailbox, she discovered that there was a letter from the court stating that Ryder had been appointed a guardian ad litem, which is a person who is appointed by the courts to represent the best interests of someone who cannot represent themselves. In this case, Ryder. He obviously is a child and cannot represent their case. I know here we call them GALs, GALs, guardian ad litems, and we also here have CASA workers, and those are court-appointed special advocates who kind of do the same thing. They just don't have a legal title, where a guardian ad litem is usually an attorney, and a CASA person is usually a trained community volunteer. All right, so Janie's claim of why Ryder needed this person, a gal, was that she was worried about his safety in the home. Hello, who's taking care of him?
Wow.
Right, so that was her claim to have this court appointed person. So of course Rachel called her on the phone, dialed her up real quick, and she said, yeah, I'm suing you, and quickly just hung up the phone. So yeah. And so Rachel immediately dials 911 and says, quote unquote, my best friend has my son and won't bring him back.
Mm-mm.
So the 911 operator puts her on hold and comes back and says, Well, ma'am, you haven't been served yet, but Miss Ridd, who is Janie Lynn, had filed a protection order against you. So at this point, Rachel is confused. She's still only a few days up after this last surgery. She has stitches in her neck. And now she gets this information that her son is being taken from her. So she replies back to the 911 operator and says, a protection from what? I mean, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Like, hello. So the 911 operator goes on to say, well, it's her house and you're going to have to leave and she keeps your son. Can you imagine?
No. It's like she went from obsessed with Rachel to obsessed with Rachel's child.
Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding. I know. This is just the tiptoe into the water. We haven't even reached the deep end yet, Nyoka.
Or maybe she's still obsessed with Rachel and trying to become her
Uh-huh.
and trying to take her child to be.
Rachel was a very attractive girl. If
Yeah.
and she was very um running and jogging every day. She took care of her body and she cared about how she presented herself. Like if you look at a lot of, she's kind of over the top, I think, but that's just me because I'm a plain Jane. But she, all of her Facebook pictures that they post on the TV show, she's very made up and, she's very fit and just takes care of herself. And Janie is kind of a plain Janie. And some of the pictures, I mean, there's some pictures of them on nights out
Right.
where she's dressed up and whatnot, but most of the time she's, I mean, I don't mean to judge people.
Yeah.
You can tell,
There's
whatever.
jealousy there. It kind of reminds me, like, in middle school, how girls can be
Mm,
jealous of their friends or if their friend has another friend or I don't know,
yep, you want to
he
be.
has this and I don't. It's
Hmm.
like that times 1,000 in this case.
Yeah, like maybe even 100,000.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
All right, so now Rachel, she's like at wit's end. She feels like she's hit rock bottom, and she's devastated, obviously. And this is the first time she's ever been like separated from Ryder. Of course, not counting when she's been in the hospital and but it's like separated and knowing she's not don't know when she's going to see him next. In the hospital, at least you have a release date and when you're going to see your family. So she leaves and takes what she can from Janie's house. She calls her dad. Her dad helps her get a hotel room nearby because again, she doesn't have a job. She's got little income. And we have to remember Janie is still in charge of what income she does have.
True.
Right? She's got it all. I guess it didn't really say, but I'm assuming they had like a joint bank account or her money went directly into Janie's account. I don't know. So she's at the hotel. Social services goes to interview Janie. And of course, Janie lays it on thick, right? She tells them that Rachel is addicted to these opioids and she can't even take care of herself. She falls, she can't get out of bed. And she just laying it thick. So on the flip side of the coin, social services has to go interview Rachel. And Rachel is there and she interviews them and she quickly explains and has her medical paperwork and documentation that she could show them. I'm on opioids. You can give me a drug test. This is how much I'm supposed to take. This is why I'm taking them. I've had 7 surgeries, 8 surgeries at this point. So the investigators come to find out, had tell her that, well, Jeannie never told her she had the surgery. That's why you take these medications. And so she didn't even mention that she had all these surgeries.
Of course not.
Yes. So after all the paperwork and the investigation, and they could confirm that that's why she took it and blood tests and whatnot, Rachel finally got Ryder back, but it was 10 days later. And so to put another layer in Rachel's cake, while all this is happening, her mother passes away. And her dad lives in South Carolina. So and they're in Utah. So There's just so much on this poor girl's plate. So now Rachel and Ryder, although they're together, they're homeless because they're not going back to Janie's house. So they move into a women's shelter. But this was really hard on Ryder because of the autism. It disrupted his routine. It was loud. It was just not any good scenario for him whatsoever. But they tried their best and were doing their best. And it doesn't say how long, but one day, out of the blue, guess who gives Rachel a call?
Her best friend, her best buddy.
Yes, she says, gives all this sad sap story about how she misses Ryder and could she just see Ryder. And at this point, too, Ryder had been asking to go home, and that's the only home he had ever known was with Janie. So he had been asking, and like if you know anybody with autism, they're very routine focused, and when you take them out of their norm, it just disrupts everything pretty bad. So he's been asking, are we going to go home? Can we go home? And it didn't say that he necessarily asked to see Janie, but it said that Rachel was thinking that he missed her, and that's why he was asking. So after a lot of consideration, she said, well, we'll meet you at a park. So they meet at a park. And of course, as soon as they get there, Janie's all with the boo-hoos and explaining that she was scared that she was going to lose them and that she did, she don't know what she was thinking. I must have been in this very, very dark place.
Red flag number 25.
Right. I think we're out of red flags by this point.
Yeah, I think so.
So, and she's begging them and asks them, just please move back in. I promise everything will be okay. And so Rachel kind of stuck in the spot with nowhere to go and knowing what they move back in.
Oh, I hate that. I know she was
Yeah.
not in a position to do anything different, but
This is
oh,
this is almost kind of like your girlfriends who keep going back to the boys that beat them up, right?
yes, yes, that's what it feels like. Because that's kind of like what their relationship kind
It,
of was.
it's very, very gaslighty.
Yeah,
So she moves back in, and with this on her plate, poor old Rachel, she found out she's going to need another surgery.
of course. Of course, she needs another surgery.
She does. So, she just was in her mind, I'm going to have this surgery. Nobody's here to help me. My family's 5 hours away. Rachel thinks, Janie is my only hope. That's she's the only one that knows Ryder, knows how to help her when she's having these surgeries. So she felt like she didn't have an option. And she had talked to her sister. So her sister starts coming into the play here a little bit, Rachel's sister. And Rachel's sister, she said, she was quoted as saying she was weary, but she just decided to stay out of it. They move back in with Janie, and Ryder begins to improve very, very quickly because he had regressed while they were at the shelter. So he is getting some of his words back and not reclusive anymore, all this kind of stuff. And Rachel was excited about that. And so she was trying to put off this next surgery as long as possible to make sure that everything was going to be kosher, right? That Janie was going to take care of Ryder and that she wasn't going to be in any bad position. And Janie seemed to be, as Rachel says, quote unquote, back to normal, the old Janie. That's Rachel's quote. So now we're going to fast forward up to April of 2019. Janie was being super helpful, taking care of Ryder and Rachel, changing Rachel's bandages, and that's going to be very important. Applying all of the ointments and helping her again track her meds because she was very adamant about not getting addicted. So a few weeks go by and Rachel began to have this weird pain in the incision in the back of her neck because this time the surgery was on her neck. And she said it wasn't like the surgery pain, it was just like a different pain in the back of her neck. And she would ask Janie, she's like, can you look at it? Can you see what's going on? And Janie was like, yeah, it looks okay. She's like, it looks good. And so Rachel was like, okay. And then the next day she's like, man, this just really hurts. And so Janie began to rub it. And Rachel said, well, why are you rubbing it? And Janie replied, oh, I'm just seeing if it's healing. And the rubbing breaks down scar tissue. And Rachel never thought much about it. But again, it's just kept hurting. It was like persistent. This pain was not going away. And it wasn't like the pain she had felt with other recovery. It was something different. So she asked Janie one more time to look. She said, can you just please look and make sure it's not infected? I might need to go to the hospital. And Janie again says, no, it looks normal. It looks fine. I don't know about you, but I'd be in the bathroom with a mirror or like
I would too. Yeah.
at the back of my neck. And I don't know if she couldn't get out of bed, but all right. So Rachel, then this is still the pain is going. She started having trouble breathing and she couldn't breathe very well. And the swelling was so bad at the back of her neck, it was pushing on her trachea. So she couldn't breathe.
Totally normal.
Sure. So she decides to go to the local urgent care. And she got back into the room and the doctor sat down, and she's like, why are you here? Blah, 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 the whole spiel. And she told him, so he said, okay, let's see what we got going on. And he goes to take the bandage off. And she said she could almost, even though he was behind her, she said she could hear him like gasp, like, and she said she kind of heard him jump back. So even though it was behind her, her senses told her that he had a very bold reaction, so to speak. And she's like, what's wrong? What is it? What's going on? All the questions you would ask. And the doctor said, this is a massive infection. I can't treat you here. And trigger warning, if you're sensitive to gross things, he said, it looks like blue cheese is coming out of your neck.
Oh, God.
Yes. So there you go. He said, I can't treat you here. I'm calling an ambulance and they're going to take you to the hospital right now. Like, that's how bad it was.
Yeah, that's a scary reaction from a doctor.
Yeah, when a doctor jumps back, it's like, oh, Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So guess what? Rachel gets to have
Surgery?
Yay! You're the winner. Right? So poor Rachel has to go for another surgery, and this time it's to debride the infection. It's to get all the infection out, make sure that it's not in the bones. And of course, when the test comes back, she's positive for MRSA, so MRSA. And if you don't know what MRSA is, it's a very serious staph infection. It can be deadly, and it can even be skin eating.
Oh, yeah, that's bad.
MRSA is also very resistant to antibiotics. So, of course, Rachel was kept in the hospital on an IV called, and I'm probably going to butcher this, so if you're a doctor or nurse listening, I apologize. Vancomycin?
Sounds good to me.
Vancomycin. Vancomycin, maybe? I don't know. Again, I apologize, nurses, doctors, whatever. All right, so this antibiotic, although it kills the MRSA, it attacks your white blood cells. And so she began to get worse. She said, I could feel my life draining out of me.
Hmm.
And she said in her core, she knew she was going to die. Like she just felt like she was going to die. She thought this was the end. So then it seemed like she was getting better. Her test results were getting better. So the hospital released her and she went home. And Rachel and Janie started on with their lives again at home. And as BFFs do, they usually share something in common, things they like to do together. And I have to laugh because this is like ironic. What do you think that their common bond was?
True crime, of course.
It sure was. So they to watch true crime shows. We should hook them up with our podcast, right? Or your
right.
Right?
Yes.
So they like to watch true crime shows and they always, watched them, talked about them. And so they were watching a show not too long after Rachel had got back from the hospital. And this was about a nurse who murdered her husband with, again, there's one of these words. I'm not gonna know the right way to say it, but succinylcholine. I don't even suck.
At least you're attempting it. I would be like, yeah, I don't know.
Succinylcholine. So the last part is choline or choline. All right, so this is a medication used to induce short-term muscle paralysis. Okay, so that's what that medicine does. And it's actually part of your general anesthetic cocktail. So if you get anesthesia, there's a little bit of this medication in the anesthesia.
That sounds like it's perfect for a serial killer.
Well, hold up. So Rachel is just sitting on the couch shaking her head because she has paramedic background, a little bit of medical background, and she's shaking her head and she just pipes up, not even thinking, and says, quote, "Wow, she's a nurse. That's pretty stupid to use something that'll show up on an autopsy." And Janie says, "Well, what do you mean?" And so Rachel begins to explain to her why you shouldn't use it and the possible things you should use. Remember that. All right. And she says, I'm just going to leave it at, or yeah. So I'm just going to leave that at that for now. So we'll go. So she explains why you shouldn't use it. And she's like, she's a nurse. She should know better. You know, all this kind of stuff. They're going on and on and on. But Rachel, this conversation really didn't stick up to Rachel because, again, they had watched so many of these TV shows together that, you know, she was always chiming in, or they were always saying, well, don't do that. Don't leave that there. And, you know, like,
what we all do.
Because we all do it and get away with it. We can all do it. Right. And so, you know, she's telling her and all this kind of stuff. So anyway, I think most of us did by now. All right. So now we're into June of 2019. And Rachel remembers Janie helping her get into bed and giving her medication. And the next thing she knows, Rachel wakes up in the hospital again. And this is all the recollection of this she has. She had no idea. When she finally came to, she's like, why am I here? You know, all the questions. Obviously, if you woke up in the hospital room and had no idea what happened, you would have lots of questions. So a nurse is there and she tells her, well, what we could find out was that your blood sugar had dropped to 13.
13. Wow.
Normal blood sugar is from 70 to 100 or 120, depending on who your doctor is. I've heard several different things, and I've read several different things on the internet. So yeah, so your fasting blood sugar should be somewhere between 70 to 120. Hers was 13.
That's horrible.
Yeah, so it was deadly low. Rachel's not diabetic. She's never had any previous issues. So she was shocked, and everybody she knew was shocked to find out, like, why would her glucose drop so low, right? So Janie calls Bet, who is Rachel's sister, and she said, you better come to the hospital right now. Something's really wrong with Rachel, and I don't think she's going to make it. Quote. That's what Janie told Rachel's sister. Now, Rachel's sister, Bet, is a nurse. So she arrives at the hospital and, of course, is asking a million trillion questions. And she's a mess. She's like, you know, your sister's on her deathbed. You don't know what's going on. And she's asking, then she starts asking Janie these questions like, what happened? Where did you know? You know, like, where was she? All this kind of stuff. And she said that Janie was just emotionless. Like, she didn't have any emotion on her face. She was not even trying to answer the questions because Bet said she was just fireballing them at her, but she wasn't even trying to ask questions. She wasn't coming up with excuses, nothing. And so this is when Rachel's sister Bet starts to become suspicious and have some questions of her own. So they kept Rachel on a 48-hour watch just to make sure her blood sugar levels were going to go back to normal and stay normal. And they did. So they really couldn't explain it. They thought it was a fluke. And they sent her home on a Sunday. 2 days later, on Tuesday, she woke up back in the hospital again. The same thing had happened. Her blood sugar had dropped. And this time she was in the hospital for 8 days. The doctors were calling specialists from all over the state, endocrinologists, And anybody that would take the call to come help them try to figure out why somebody's blood sugar would drop so low, and because there was no reason it should happen. Like we said, she wasn't diabetic. They couldn't find any medical reason why this kept happening. And so this happened again in September. So the first time was in, what was it?
June, I think you said.
Yeah, June. Then it happened again 2 days later, and then again in September. And this was the third time her insulin had dropped to 13. So each time it dropped to insulin, and the insulin level had dropped to 13. So at this point, Bet, her sister, was thinking, what's she doing to herself for attention? She thought Rachel was trying to get more attention. And so she went and bluntly asked Rachel. And Rachel, of course, said, I'm not doing anything. Why would I do that and go to the hospital? Don't you think I've spent enough time in hospitals? She was like going on and on and on. And so finally, after tests and tests and tests, doctors came to the conclusion that the only way this was happening is that somehow she was getting insulin in her body. It was the only explanation, that somehow she was getting, somebody was giving her insulin or she was taking insulin. So knowing this, Rachel, God love her little heart, every time she would go, right before she go to bed, she would get the bag of sugar or the container of sugar and just spoonful sugar into her mouth. She said, I would just, until I couldn't stand it anymore, she said, I would just eat all this sugar, hoping that it would keep her sugar level up and it wouldn't go down. And so she would just shove it in her mouth, right? I don't know. I don't know if I'd do sugar. I'd probably go to the little Debbie section or something. Right?
Yeah, that would probably help.
Right. That seems reasonable.
And then like 3 spoonfuls of sugar instead of 20.
Yeah, she didn't want it to happen.
Yeah.
Right? This was happening again, happened repeatedly, multiple calls for an ambulance, stays in the hospital. It was a vicious cycle. She was fearful she was going to die, and she didn't know who was going to be able to take care of Ryder. So on December 12th, 2019, this is when the FBI comes into the scene. And they begin to investigate on a tip from an undercover agent from the Black Web, good old Black Web, of someone who is trying to purchase Versa. All right, VRSA. So remember back to the trigger warning and the infection in her neck?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Versa stands for, remember that medicine that they gave her to fight that blue cheese?
Yes.
Vancomycin, or however you say that. So this Versa, VRSA, stands for that antibiotic, vancomycin resistant staphylococcus, just staph, and then there's an A word after our Aurus. Megan be so sad if I don't know how to say the words. AUREUS, right? And this is a strain of staph infection, which is bacteria, and it's resistant to that antibiotic. How convenient to know that if you have MRSA, you get this antibiotic. So let's just give you something that antibiotic won't get rid of. So somebody was trying to purchase this, and that's pretty crazy that you can get that on the internet, on the Black Web.
Yeah.
All right, so remember, like I said, remember Rachel had that MRSA, and that's the medicine they used to fight the MRSA. So this stuff is resistant to that. So are we catching on?
Yep.
We staying up on this speed here?
Yep.
All right. Now I'm going to hop back and fill you in on what Rachel said to Jeannie when they were BFFing on the couch watching the true crime show. So she said, yes, it is. Rachel said that it's dumb to use something suspicious in a suspicious death that would show up in an autopsy. She would have to use something that is naturally occurring in the body, like, insulin. So she pretty much plotted out her own stuff to Jeannie.
Yeah, she did.
All right. So that is what Jeannie suggested, or Rachel suggested that this nurse used to offer husband, something that you would find in your own body, right? So the FBI discovers this Black Web MRSA purchase, and they are alerted Utah State Criminal Investigation. because the Utah state criminal statutes specifically state biological agents that are entering through its borders through the mail are considered weapons of mass destruction. So any kind of biological agent that comes in through Utah's borders, the FBI is watching you, and it is considered a weapon of mass destruction. I'm just putting that out there.
That's
So,
crazy.
yeah. So they, red flags go up for the FBI, and they're extremely concerned because of this biological agent. It can grow, multiply, and propagate very quickly. So their concern is like, who's using it? What are they using it for? How are they using it?
Right. I mean, they could look at that like a terrorist
Yeah, exactly.
attack or something.
They said, they like didn't know how or why or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, further investigation by the FBI, they find the person who is attempting to buy the said Versa was in fact Jamie Lynn Ridd.
Of course. Of course.
So yeah, there's our picture perfect best friend, right?
Right.
So they begin to investigate her, and they work quickly because of this biological agent, and they don't know how she's planning to use this bacteria. Fortunately, they found out with their investigation about the custody of Ryder. So that sent up another red flag for the FBI. Thank goodness they see the red flags, right? And now Janie was the main caregiver for Ryder and Rachel. So they quickly began to work on the assumption that Janie was going to use this quote unquote weapon to harm Rachel to get custody of Ryder. And remember that nice little life insurance policy she took out?
Oh, yeah.
And and the beneficiary and all that good junk. All right, so they had to move quickly because they considered this the motive and the opportunity. We're still in December of 2019, and Rachel noticed that Janie was seeming darker. Like, she just had a dark spirit about her. She describes her as detached and noticed she would leave Ryder alone in times that she would not have left him alone before, and in sometimes situations that could be dangerous for him with his autism. Rachel still had Janie listed as her guardian in her will, but was letting Janie know that she was going to change the will to have her father become the beneficiary. Rachel told Janie that she thought she was going to move out. They could work on their friendship. She thought their friendship needed work. And Rachel said that she felt she needed this space. And so Janie begged, please at least stay till Christmas. So this was at the beginning of December. So on December 15th, the FBI started to make plans on their investigation to take down Janie. So they set up a fake delivery of this Versa biological agent that she was going to get to a post office box with tracking, so they would know when it arrives. And by the way, she was talking to this undercover agent on the dark web about how much do I have to pay to get it here ASAP.
Oh, man, she wanted expedited.
Right. So no doubt it was probably Rachel's money.
Oh, yeah.
Her respite money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So December 17th, the package was delivered to a post office, and the way they showed it on the TV show was more like a UPS pickup box and not actual USPS. So I don't know if that matters, and of course, FBI team was casing the place, and they were sitting outside watching on surveillance. They were waiting for her to come and get it. So she went in, she got the package, and she came out, and they've actually followed her to her work. And they went into her work and began to question her there. They asked, and told her superiors why they were going to talk to her, that they needed to talk to her. And of course, she lied about the package. First, she didn't get it, and then, oh, yes, she got it, but it's just a pack of coffee beans.
Mm-hmm.
And then she turned, and she, so things that were the questioning was going on, and she's like, what, is it not coffee beans? Should I be worried? She's like, and then she says, they said it's bacteria. We know you have bacteria. And she's like, oh, I'm going to start to brew beer, but I don't know what to do. So they said you have to have this bacteria to brew this beer. So she's, she just like changing her story more than her underwear at this point. So she finally, of course, the FBI is like grilling her, and she admits to buying this Versa. And so that gave them enough probable cause to put her in custody under arrest at her office. So December 18th, Rachel answers a knock at the door. And of course, she's still at Janie's house at this time. And they were like official people, she said, standing at the door. She wasn't really sure who they were, but she said they looked official looking. They were in suit and ties, all that kind of stuff. And they started asking her where she had her packages delivered. And, she's like, what? She's just kind of caught off guard. And then they start asking her, does Janie do science experiments? Does she make beer? She's like, no. Like, I've never seen her make beer. I've never seen her do science experiments, all this kind of stuff. And of course, they had a search warrant, so she let them in, and they're searching the place. And, at this point, it's still making 0 sense to Rachel. Rachel has no idea what's going on. And so quickly, she's like, am I in trouble? She's like, is Janie in trouble? And they say yes. And then they kind of give her the whole spiel about what they found, why she was arrested, and all this kind of stuff. And so Rachel is kind of in denial. She doesn't believe that Janie would intentionally harm her. She still doesn't believe it at this part. On the search of the house, they found ketamine, and they found needles, injector pens of insulin. And they concluded with Rachel's medical records that Janie had tried to kill her at least 5 times in 1 year.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yes. So Janie was charged with 3 crimes: aggravated abuse of a vulnerable adult, attempted aggravated abuse of a vulnerable adult, attempted acquisition of a biological weapon, and she was convicted of all 3 of these charges in August of 2010. The judge ordered her 1 to 10 years, but Miss Janie only spent 25 months in prison, and she was granted parole and released in January of 2022.
That's aggravating.
Very. And Rachel's like final thing she said, she didn't ruin my life, she ruined hers.
Yeah, I was looking into this case too, and you really had all of it. The only thing I can really add is when Janie was sentenced to serve up to 20 years in prison, a few hours after her sentencing hearing, Rachel, the victim, spoke to the media in a press conference, and she said, quote, "We considered each other family and we called each other our sisters," end quote. In her statement to the court, Rachel mentioned that Janie watched her scream in pain for the infections that she injected. And then on Facebook, I was looking up stuff and people were posting, commenting their thoughts as they do.
Those are always
And yeah, somebody was like, if you look, her new bestie has a new best friend who looks a lot like Rachel.
yeah.
And someone said that Janie was her roommate back in the 90s. And she brought the boy to her house to visit while Rachel was, quote, sick. And this was incredibly disturbing.
Right. So like does she have how do you live a double life as a roommate though? That's what it is that what that's saying? Like she was at or
The
she
way, no, the way I took it is like they remained friends and she just went to visit
okay. So I
when
read
she had the kid.
so that would be crazy. I know like men have double lives and women have double roommates. The other
Yes.
the other thing too was there's an audio thing of a phone call that Janie made from prison. And she was like saying that when I get out, Ryder's gonna come back to me. Like, yeah, Ryder needs to come back to me.
That's so creepy. I wonder because we don't know anything other than really Rachel's point of view when it
Right.
came to the show. But when she's down now with these surgeries, do you think that Janie maybe whispered things into the little boy's ear, like, I love you more. You know what I mean? Like, who knows?
Yes,
Who knows what she could have said?
I didn't even imagine. Or like, your mommy's gonna die or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if she is with like trying to kill her, just like, oh, don't worry about mom. She won't be around much longer or something. Like, ugh.
So how much time does she do again? Let me see.
She only did 25 months.
Wow. How
So
do you attempt to kill somebody 5 times in 1 year and you only serve 25 months?
because this is the other thing that really kind of angers me is she was only charged with aggravated abuse of a vulnerable adult. She wasn't even charged with attempted murder. Even though like the FBI said she tried to kill her 5 times, she was only charged with aggravated abuse, attempted aggravated abuse, and then attempted, I guess that's all, attempted getting of the biological weapon.
Yeah, she
But
should have done more time alone for possessing a weapon of mass destruction. Like,
because if it was me, I would still be rotting in jail. I mean, that's just how
yeah,
I luck. I don't know. She must have had a really good attorney, apparently.
apparently so. I don't know, but this was a crazy story and
It is. Keep your
uh
and your enemies closer.
yes. Oh my God. Yeah. That's where that saying comes from.
Right.
I mean, she seemed like such the perfect friend, and of course, when it's too good to be true,
Why do you?
I don't know. That sucks.
Yeah.
I hope Rachel's life is better now because she had it pretty crappy for a long time.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for coming on. This is amazing. I love the story. It was crazy, and I feel very bad for Rachel.
Yeah.
At this point, she's probably had another 10 surgeries, poor thing.
I love her. Yeah.
Ugh, that's awful. But if you guys are interested in listening to more Operation Evil, you can hop over to the Patreon. We got over 40 episodes there. I don't have September's out yet because I'm still on day 2 of September, but by the time you hear this, it'll be later. But anyway, that doesn't matter. Thank you so much. And whenever you want to come back and do another one, just let me know.
Awesome.
Um,
Thank you so much. I had so much fun.
this was so much fun. If you guys have any creepy stories you want to send in for Halloween time, please send them in. Send them, message me, email operationevilpodcast@gmail.com. I want to hear the creepy stuff. You can stay anonymous. I don't know. I love doing spooky stuff around Halloween, and I wish I had more stories to share because it's my favorite. Yeah. But anyway, I'm really excited because I just watched all the Conjurings too, and I'm ready for the new one. I'm ready to watch it. Anyway, okay, I'm done talking your ear off. Okay, until next time, goodbye.